Picture this, a war so unusual, it pits man against bird in the vast plains of Western Australia. Welcome to the Great Emu War of 1932. Now you might be thinking, wait, a war against birds? Indeed, my friends, you heard it right. This was a bizarre conflict, a true David and Goliath story where the Australian farmers were up against a formidable adversary, the emus, causing chaos on their farmlands. This is the curious tale of the Great Emu War of 1932. Our story begins in the aftermath of World War I. Tired but hopeful, Australian soldiers returned home, ready for a new beginning. The Australian government, in a bid to support their heroes, provided them with land to cultivate in Western Australia. Their mission was simple: till the land, plant the seeds and reap the fruits of their labour. However, they soon found themselves on the front lines again, this time pitted against an unexpected adversary. Nope, not a foreign army, but thousands of emus. These towering, flightless birds, driven by hunger, descended upon the farmland, treating the wheat crops like an all-you-can-eat buffet. The soldiers turned farmers watched in dismay as their livelihood was pecked away, grain by grain. Faced with this feathery menace, the farmers did what they thought best. They called in the military. And so the stage was set for one of the most unusual wars in history, a war where the enemy was not a nation but nature itself. Enter Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery, armed not with strategies for guerrilla warfare but with Lewis guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. This was the military's response to the emu invasion, a response that was as dramatic as it was unconventional. The mission seemed simple enough: drive back the feathered invaders and protect the farmers' crops. But the emus, it seemed, had other plans. These birds, far from being easy targets, were surprisingly resilient and elusive. They scattered across the fields in small groups, making them difficult to pin down. And then there was their extraordinary ability to withstand gunfire. Some birds reportedly took multiple hits and yet continued to run away, seemingly unscathed. It was as if these emus were wearing invisible armor. As the operation wore on, the soldiers found themselves fighting an uphill battle. The emus, far from being deterred, appeared to learn from their encounters. They began to employ guerrilla tactics of their own, splitting into small units that were nearly impossible to target effectively. The situation reached a point of such absurdity that the military's efforts were called into question. The Australian media began to cover the story with a mix of amusement and bewilderment. Despite their best efforts, the soldiers found themselves in a losing battle. It seemed that the emus, in their own unique way, had outmaneuvered the might of the Australian military. After several weeks of fruitless attempts to curb the emu population, with only a fraction of the birds killed, Major Meredith was forced to withdraw. The Great Emu War had in essence been lost. The mighty Australian military had been defeated, not by a formidable foreign power, but by a flock of elusive flightless birds. The media had a field day with this unexpected turn of events. Australian newspapers covered the story with a blend of amusement and bewilderment, adding a layer of hilarity to the whole affair. One account humorously described the emus as militant leaders, outmaneuvering the Australian forces at every turn. The birds, it seemed, had won the war, and their victory was being celebrated with a mix of laughter and disbelief. In the wake of this unlikely defeat, the farmers had to reassess their strategies. The military had been their trump card, and its failure left them with limited options. They turned to more traditional methods of pest control, building fences around their farmland to keep the feathered invaders at bay. It was a more labor-intensive approach, but it did offer some level of protection against the emus. The government, too, had to rethink its approach. Seeing the military's efforts come to naught, they instituted a bounty system offering rewards for every emu killed. This gave the farmers an added incentive to protect their crops and provided a practical, if somewhat grim, solution to the emu problem. But even as life moved on, the Great Emu War was not forgotten. It remained a curious chapter in Australia's history, a testament to the resilience of nature and the limits of human intervention. The emus, once seen as pests, had become symbols of resistance, their victory a humorous reminder of the unpredictability of nature. The legacy of the Great Emu War lives on as a humorous reminder of the unpredictability of nature and the limits of human intervention. So the next time you see an emu, remember the Great Emu War and perhaps give a nod of respect to these surprising warriors of the animal kingdom.